said the word like it was normal and routine. Bankruptcy like he says it every Tuesday in between the coffee and the conference call, just another file. But for me it was the funeral of everything worthwhile. I built that business with my hands. I took the loan at 24. I signed the lease, I hired the team. I opened up the door. The first year was a miracle. The second year was gold. The third year was the pandemic, and the story was retold. In debt and closing notices, and silence from the bank, and the man who built it from the ground watched it sink and sank. I couldn't tell my wife at first. I tried 3 times but lost the nerve. She trusted me with everything, and I didn't want to swerve. The image she had of the man who said, "I've got us, don't you fear." But the got us turned to lost us in the span of half a year. I sold the truck, I sold the tools, I sold the wedding watch, the one my father-in-law gave me at the altar. Every notch of pride I ever carried was auctioned off for cents, and the man who had the Midas touch was sleeping in a tent of shame that nobody could see, but I could feel it everywhere. The richest kind of poverty is when the money leaves, but the memories are there. But God, you set the cattle on 1,000 hills are yours. You said you clothed the lilies and you open up the doors. So why does the faithful man who tithed on every check feel like you forgot the address and the promise of protect? I'm not angry, Lord, I'm just confused and on my knees. The bankruptcy took the building, but don't let it take the peace. My children don't know why we moved from the house into the small. They think it's an adventure, they think the bunk beds are a ball. But the bunk beds are the evidence of the financial floor, and the adventure is survival dressed in something kids adore. My wife cut every coupon, and she never said a word of blame. She said we didn't marry money, we married something more than fame. And the woman who could have left me in the wreckage of the fall became the richest person in my life by choosing to stay through it all. The church was hard to face because the church had seen me give. I was the one who wrote the big checks and the one who said, "Let's live generously for the kingdom." But the kingdom's looking different from the bottom of the well, and the ones who praise my giving don't know how far I fell. A deacon pulled me aside and said, "I heard about the loss." I braced myself for judgment, but instead he bore the cross. He handed me an envelope and said, "Don't open it here. The body of Christ isn't just Sunday, it's the Monday in the fear." And I opened up the envelope inside my car that night, enough to cover 2 months' rent and a note job, lost everything. The cattle, the children, the health, the wife's respect. And the Bible says God gave him double what the enemy had wrecked. Not because Job was perfect, but because Job didn't quit. He sat in the ashes and he worshiped, and he said the Lord gives and he takes, and I still worship through the grit. The bankruptcy discharged in September. The debt was cleared by law, but the shame took longer to dissolve than the numbers on the wall. I still flinch when the mail arrives. I still check the account 3 times. But the God who walked me through the valley is rewriting all the lines. I started again, not the same business. Something smaller, something true. A workshop in the garage where I build the things I always wanted to. No loan, no lease, no overhead. Just a man and a saw and a prayer. And the income's not the same, but the peace is beyond compare. My daughter asked me, Daddy, are we poor? I thought about the word, and I said, we're the richest family on the block if you count what can't be heard. We've got love that doesn't fluctuate with the market or the news. And the God who walks with the bankrupt is the God we'll never lose. She smiled and went back to her drawing of the family in the small. And the picture had a sun so big it covered the entire wall. And I thought, the child sees something that the spreadsheet never could. The bankruptcy took the balance, but the family's still good. She ties the scrubs at 6 p.m. and kisses sleeping heads goodnight. Her children won't remember that she left. They'll wake to morning light and think she's been there all along, because the sitter keeps the peace. But the night nurse drives to the hospital where the dying never see. Room 412 is a man who won't make it past the dawn. Room 308 is a woman breathing through a machine that carries on. Room 2117 is a teenager who crashed the car on prom night. And the night nurse walks the hallway like a shepherd in the fluorescent light. She checks the vitals every hour with a gentleness the daylight doesn't know. Because the nighttime in a hospital is where the patients feel most alone. The visitors are gone, the flowers droop, the TV's on, but no one's watching. And the only voice they hear is hers when she comes softly knocking. She fluffs the pillow that doesn't need the fluff, but the touch is what it gives. She She held his hand at 3 a.m. when nobody else was near. The man in room 412, whose family couldn't make it here. He said, I don't wanna die alone. And she said, you're not alone tonight. I'm right here and I'm not leaving, and I'll hold you past the light. She wasn't trained for this in school. The textbooks teach the chart, but nobody teaches how to be the last hand on a heart. She stayed with him for 40 minutes past her other rounds, and the man who died at 3:47 left the world with human sounds. Not the beeping, not the machine, but a voice that said, I'm here. The night nurse gave the dying man the thing he needed, someone near. She cried in the supply closet where the gauze is stacked in rows. Not loud, just the silent kind, the kind that only God knows. Because the night nurse loses patience like the night loses the stars. One by one they fade away, and she's the one who counts the scars. She's lost for this month, and everyone took something that she can't replace. A name, a voice, a hand squeeze, a thankful look upon her face. And the world says don't get attached, the training says stay clinical and clean. But the night nurse is a human, and the humans feel the in-between. But God says I station my angels at the bedside of the weak. And the angel I sent to this hospital wears scrubs and tennis sneaks. She doesn't have wings, she has a badge and a tired, tender hand. And the night nurse is the closest thing to heaven in this land. He says every hand she held was a hand I held through her. Every forehead she wiped was a prayer that didn't need the words to stir. The night nurse is my instrument in the orchestra of care, and I see every shift she works, and every patient, and every prayer. She drives home at 7 a.m. with the sunrise in her eyes. The coffee's cold, the radio's off, the silence is the prize. She walks through the front door and her daughter says, Mommy, you're home. And the night nurse holds the child like she's the antidote for every bone that ached through the 12-hour dark. In every life she held together, the morning hug from her daughter is the medicine for the weather. She sleeps 4 hours, maybe 5, then she's up for homework in the park. And nobody at the playground knows she held a dying man in the dark. She's just a mom on the bench with the sunscreen and the snack. But the night nurse is a warrior who keeps coming back. So to every night nurse walking the hallway when the world is fast asleep, who holds the hand the family dropped and who watches the monitors beep. God sees you, God stationed you, God assigned you to that floor. The night nurse is him, is the holiest sound behind the hospital door. You are more than a badge number, you are more than a shift report filed. You are the last voice on earth for someone's mother, father, child. The night nurse is him, play softly through the hallways of the Lord. And heaven keeps a record of every single patient you adored. You are seen, you are honored, you are loved beyond the chart. The night nurse is him, is the rhythm of God's heart. envelope was thick, and the return address was a law firm downtown. I held it at the mailbox like a grenade that hadn't found the ground. I knew what it was before I opened it. I knew because the silence told me so. The silence between us for the last 6 months had been saying what the paper's going to show. I sat in the car for 20 minutes with the engine running cold. I read the words, dissolution of marriage, like the story being told was someone else's, some other couple, some other breaking vow. But the names on the paper were ours, and the breaking's happening now. We said forever at the altar with the flowers and the rings. We said forever to the preacher and the family and the strings of a violin that played the song we chose because it was our thing. But forever has an asterisk when the pain outweighs the ring. She didn't leave because she hated me. She left because the love had changed its clothes. It went from passion to convenience to the silence no one chose. And the counseling didn't fix it, and the date nights came too late, and the two becoming one became the two who couldn't tolerate. Lord, how do I pray about the papers on the table tonight? Do I pray for reconciliation, or do I pray for the strength to sign what's right? Do I fight for what is broken, or do I let the broken go? Because the Bible says you hate divorce, but the Bible also says you know the hearts that tried, and the hands that bled, and the knees that hit the ground. Lord, give me wisdom for the paperwork when the wisdom can't be found. My kids don't know yet, and that's the part that cuts the worst. The conversation that's approaching is the most rehearsed and cursed. How do you tell a 9-year-old that mommy and daddy are okay, but they won't be sleeping in the same house after Saturday? He's gonna ask me, did I do something wrong? And my heart will hit the wall, because the child always blames himself for the gravity of the fall. And no amount of it's not your fault will remove the silent doubt. The divorce papers have 2 names, but the child is what it's really all about. I remember the kitchen when it used to sound like home, the laughter and the recipes and the music on the phone. I remember when she danced beside the stove on a Friday night, and I said, you're the best thing in my life, and I meant it, and she smiled, and the light in her eyes was the kind that poets waste their ink trying to describe. But the kitchen's quiet now, the light is gone to hide. But God, you are the God of broken things that still have use. You took the jawbone of a donkey and you turned it loose. You took the water jars of shame and filled them up with wine. And maybe the divorce isn't the death, maybe it's the painful kind of prune. I'm not excusing it, I'm not pretending that it's good. I'm just asking you to meet me in the paperwork, and the should have tried harder, the should have said more, the should have listened when she cried instead of walking through the door. She called me yesterday and said, I'm sorry that it came to this. And I said, I'm sorry too. And the apology was the hardest kind of kiss, the kind that closes what the altar opened up that day. 2 people who still love each other but can't find a way to stay. Not every divorce is hate. Some are the surrender of the war, when two good people realize that the love has changed its core. And the bravest thing isn't always fighting for what's done. Sometimes the bravest thing is saying, I release you to the one. I signed the papers on a Thursday with a pen that felt like lead, and the signature was the heaviest single word I've ever said. Not because I wanted it, but because the wanting wasn't enough. And the marriage that I built with her is now the memory of the tough. But God says I was at the altar when you said the vow, and I'm at the table now, and I'll be there tomorrow somehow. I'm not just the God of weddings, I'm the God of the after too, the God of the signing, the God of the moving, the God of starting new. So if the envelope arrived and the words are cold and legal on the page, and the forever that you promised feels like a prison in a cage, God sees a divorce and He doesn't see a failure or a fraud. He sees two people who are hurting, and He holds them both in God. You are not a broken vow, you are not a statistic or a file. The God who holds the covenant holds you too, and He'll walk with you the mile. The papers are not the ending, they're the bend inside the road. And the God, the divorce papers will help you carry the load. There is grace for this, there is mercy in the ink, and the God who hates the breaking loves the broken more than you think. I graduated top of the class, and he said, not bad. I made the varsity team as a freshman, and he said, your brother did that. I got the scholarship, the job, the house, the wife, the car, the kid, and every single milestone that I hit was met with something he never did. He never said, I'm proud of you. 4 words, that's all I need. Not a trophy or a medal, just a man who planted me as a seed to look at what I grew into and water it with his voice. But my father kept the praise inside, like it was something he couldn't choice. He showed up to the games, but he critiqued the way I played. He came to the graduation, but he talked about the grades I should have made. He walked me down the aisle with my bride, but he told me in the car, don't mess this up. Like encouragement was a bridge too far. I know he loved me, I believe it in the theory of my faith, but the practice of his silence built a wall around my space. And the boy inside the man is still performing for the nod that never comes from the audience of one, his earthly God. Lord, how do I heal the wound that doesn't bleed but never stops? The invisible deficiency that lives beneath the tops of every achievement and every job well done. I'm a 40-year-old man still waiting for approval from a silent gun. I'm proud of you. 4 syllables that could rebuild the wall, but the man who held the hammer never swung the words at all. My therapist said the word validation, and I cried for 20 minutes straight. She said the father wound is the deepest one, because it shapes the way you relate to God, to work, to your own worth, to the mirror on the wall. If the first man who should celebrate you doesn't, then the silence echoes through it all. Silence echoes through it all. And she was right, because I work like I'm proving something. Every single day I overachieve, I overperform, I over everything in every way. Not because I love the hustle, but because the hustle might produce the sentence. My father never gave me the approval, the reduce of every doubt I carry, that I'm not enough to earn the praise. The son who never heard I'm proud is running a marathon that never paid. I watched my father with my son last weekend in the yard. He threw the ball and my boy caught it. Nothing fancy, nothing hard. And my father said to my 5-year-old, "Hey, great catch, little man." And the words hit me like a freight train, because I never heard the man say anything that gentle to the boy I used to be. And I walked inside the kitchen and I wept where he couldn't see. Not because he gave my son what he denied me all those years, but because the proof was on the table that the words existed through his fears. He could say it, he always could, he just chose a different path. And the son absorbed the silence like a sponge absorbs the bath. But God says I am the father who says it every day. I'm proud of you, not for what you do, but for who you are in every way. I'm proud of you on the bad days. I'm proud of you when you fail. I'm proud of you when the performance stops and the real you lifts the veil. He says the father wound is real, I see it, I don't deny. But the Father in heaven has been speaking since the day that you first cried. And every sunset was me saying, "Look what I made for you." And every morning was me whispering, "I'm proud, I always knew." I sat my father down last month, the hardest chair I've ever pulled. I said, "Dad, I need to tell you something that I've never had the room to hold." He looked at me with the same eyes that never gave the word. And I said, "I spent my whole life trying to hear something you've never stirred. I needed you to say you're proud just once, that's all it took. Not the criticism, not the silence, just one page from a different book." He stared at the table for a minute and the clock was all we heard. Then he said the strangest thing, he said, "My father never said those words to me either. And I didn't know I was supposed to pass what I never received. And for the first time in my life, I saw the wound that he believed." The generational silence broke that evening at the table in the small. He said, "I'm proud of you," and the words were thick and raw and tall, not polished, not rehearsed, just a 70-year-old man saying for the first time what his father never began. And I wept like a child, not the man, the boy, the one who needed it at 10, the one who scored the goal and looked at the stands and found the silent dead. The boy finally heard the words from the man who couldn't find them on the shelf. And the healing started there at the table where a father healed himself. So if you're still waiting for the words that never come from the man who gave you life, if the silence shaped your marriage and your work and your strife, God is saying it tonight on repeat. He's saying it now and loud. I'm proud of you, I've always been you. My heart races at 4 a.m. for absolutely no reason at all. The ceiling fan becomes the helicopter and the bedroom feels too small. I check the locks 3 times, I check the stove, I check the door. I check the breathing of my children like they might not breathe no more. The doctor says it's anxiety, the church says it's a lack of faith, and somewhere in between the prescription and the prayer I lost my place. Because how do I trust the God who calms the storm when the storm is in my brain? And the waves aren't in the ocean, they're chemical and they won't explain. I cancel plans on Saturdays because the thought of crowds is too much weight. I rehearse conversations in the mirror like every sentence is a debate. I overthink the text I sent 3 hours ago, and now I'm sure that the silence means they hate me, and the friendship has no cure. The grocery store becomes a battlefield, the parking lot becomes a war. The phone call from a number I don't know becomes the thing I'm trembling for. And people say, just breathe, like breathing is the cure for what I feel. But the lungs are doing fine, it's the mind that won't sit still. But God, you said be anxious for nothing, and I want to, Lord, I do. But the nothing is everything, and the everything is stuck on glue. I'm not faithless, I'm just fighting something chemical and deep. The anxiety believer still believes, but the believing doesn't help me sleep. I trust you with my salvation, but my nervous system doesn't know. Lord, teach the body what the spirit already learned a long time ago. I sat in church last Sunday, and the worship started loud, and the walls began to close, and I couldn't find my way through the crowd. My chest got tight, my hands went numb, my vision started gray, and the panic attack in the house of God was the loneliest kind of prey. I walked outside and sat on the curb and put my head between my knees, and a woman I had never met sat down beside me with her keys. She said, I get them too, the panic right here in the chest. And for the first time someone in the church said the word without the test of whether it was spiritual or medical, or a sign of something wrong. She just sat with me in silence, and that silence was a song. The medication helped, but the stigma didn't leave. The brother at the Bible study said if you had more faith you wouldn't grieve. He said, David said, I will fear no evil. So the anxiety is a choice, and I wanted to explain, but the anxiety took my voice. Because the cruelest thing the church can do is weaponize the word against the mind that's broken in a way the spirit hasn't cured. Jesus sweat blood in the garden, that's a panic attack in prayer. The savior of the universe had anxiety, and nobody said he wasn't there. And God says I made the brain, I know its wiring and its walls. I know the chemical, the synapses, the misfires and the falls. I'm not ashamed of your medication, I'm not offended by the pill. I created the doctor and the science, they're extensions of my will. He says the anxiety doesn't disqualify the faith, it qualifies the miracle of showing up in the unsafe. Every Sunday that you make it through the door despite the chest is a testimony louder than the one who's never been in the distress. I'm learning how to pray with the shaking and the sweat. I'm learning how to worship with the heart rate and the threat. I'm learning that the faith isn't the absence of the fear, it's the presence of the God who says I'm holding you right here in the panic, right here in the fast, right here when the ceiling feels like it's going to crash. I'm the calm inside the storm that's happening in your mind, and the anxiety believer is the bravest faith I prayer at 8:01, and the two work side by side like the medicine and the sun. I'm not choosing between the faith and the pharmacy tonight. I'm choosing both because the God who heals invented every kind of light. And the boy who checks the locks 3 times is the same boy who checks on everyone he knows. The anxiety made me sensitive to the pain that others don't expose. The curse became the gift I never wanted, but I need. The anxiety believer feels the world in the deepest kind of speed. So if their chest is tight tonight, and the ceiling's closing in, and the faith isn't stopping the trembling, and the medicine's wearing thin, God is in the panic attack. He's in the 4 a.m. race. He's in the grocery store, out 3 in the crowds, in the open space. You are not faithless. You are not weak. You are not less. The anxiety believer is the warrior in the dress of an ordinary life that nobody knows is hard. God sees the battlefield inside your mind, and He's standing guard. Breathe, beloved, He's here. Even when the breathing doesn't work, He's here.